She thought she could bully an innocent family with phony legal threats. But what Karen didn't know is that her neighbor was an actual attorney, and she was about to learn a hard lesson in the meaning of justice. Karen glared at the stack of official-looking letters on her kitchen counter, each one emblazoned with the bold letterhead of a prominent law firm. A satisfied grin crept across her face as she imagined the panic and dread her neighbors must be feeling. Those arrogant fools thought they could defy her, but now they would learn the consequences. With a triumphant flourish, she stuffed the letters into envelopes and marched next door, the heels of her designer shoes clicking rhythmically against the pavement. She paused at the front door, straightening her designer blouse and smoothing a hand over her meticulously styled hair. This was her moment of reckoning. The door swung open to reveal Lisa, her neighbor's wife, eyes wide with alarm. "What is the meaning of this?" Lisa demanded, clutching the envelopes. Karen drew herself up to her full height, eyes glinting with malice. "You and your husband have been violating neighborhood bylaws for months. It's time you faced the consequences." Lisa's brow furrowed in confusion. "But that's not true. We've done nothing wrong." "Oh, I think you'll find that's not the case," Karen purred, savoring the fear in Lisa's expression. "Those letters outline the litany of your transgressions. If you don't rectify the situation immediately, you'll be facing legal action." Lisa's hands trembled as she opened the envelopes, scanning the contents with growing horror. "This can't be real," she whispered, her voice shaking. "These are fabricated. We've done nothing wrong." Karen's lips curled into a sneer. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, my dear. These are very real, and your time is running out." With a final, triumphant nod, she turned on her heel and strode back to her own home, leaving Lisa standing in the doorway, her world crumbling around her. Lisa stood in the doorway, the incriminating letters clutched in her trembling hands. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of Karen's accusations. They had always tried to be good neighbors, respecting the community bylaws and maintaining their property to the best of their ability. How could this be happening? Steeling herself, Lisa hurried back inside and found her husband, Dave, engrossed in work at his desk. "Honey, we have a problem," she said, her voice laced with panic. Dave looked up, his brow furrowing as he took in his wife's distressed expression. "What is it? What's wrong?" Lisa handed him the letters, her eyes pleading. "Karen just came by and served us with these. She's accusing us of violating the neighborhood bylaws and threatening legal action." Dave's eyes widened as he scanned the documents, his jaw tightening with each passing moment. "This is preposterous," he growled, his fingers clenching around the paper. "These are completely fabricated. We've done nothing wrong." Lisa nodded, her own anger and frustration rising to the surface. "I know, but she seems so sure of herself. I'm worried she's going to make good on her threats." Dave pushed himself away from the desk, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Well, we're not going to let her bully us. I'm going to march over there and set her straight." Lisa reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Honey, wait. I don't think confronting her directly is the best idea. We need to approach this carefully, with the law on our side." Dave paused, his muscles visibly tense. "You're right," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'll call our lawyer in the morning and see what we can do." Lisa nodded, relief washing over her. "Okay, let's do that. I just hope we can get this resolved quickly before it spirals out of control." The couple exchanged a worried glance, both acutely aware that their peaceful existence had been shattered by Karen's vindictive actions. The battle lines had been drawn, and they knew they were in for a fight. The next morning, Dave placed the call to their family attorney, his fingers drumming anxiously on the kitchen counter as he waited for the line to connect. When the familiar voice finally answered, he launched into a detailed explanation of the situation, his words tumbling out in a rush. "This is highly concerning," the attorney said, his brow furrowing with concern. "If what you're telling me is true, then Karen's actions could be considered harassment and even extortion." Let me look into this further and see what can be done. Dave exhaled a shaky breath, relief washing over him. Thank you, I really appreciate your help. This whole situation has me and Lisa on edge. We've never had any problems with the neighbors before, and now it feels like our home is under siege. I understand your anxiety, but try not to worry too much just yet, the attorney reassured him. I'll get started on this right away and keep you updated. In the meantime, I'd advise you to avoid any direct confrontation with Karen. Let me handle this through proper legal channels. Okay, we'll do that, Dave replied, his muscles finally beginning to relax. I just hope we can put a stop to this before it spirals out of control. That's exactly what I intend to do, the attorney said firmly. I'll be in touch as soon as I have more information. Hang in there, you two. As Dave hung up the phone, he felt a sense of cautious optimism. With their lawyer on the case, he and Lisa might just have a fighting chance against Karen's underhanded tactics. But he couldn't shake the lingering feeling of unease, knowing that their peaceful existence had been shattered by their neighbor's vindictive actions. The following days were filled with tension and uncertainty as Dave and Lisa waited anxiously for their attorney's update. Karen, meanwhile, continued her campaign of harassment, delivering a steady stream of menacing letters and making pointed comments whenever their paths crossed. One afternoon, as Lisa was tending to her garden, Karen strolled by, her lips curled in a condescending sneer. I see you're still clinging to those pathetic flower beds, she sneered. I hope you're enjoying them while you can. Time's running out, you know. Lisa bristled, her fingers tightening around the gardening trowel. I don't know what you're talking about, Karen, she replied, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. Oh, I think you do, Karen purred, her eyes glinting with malice. Those letters I sent should have made it perfectly clear. You and your husband are in violation of the neighborhood bylaws, and if you don't rectify the situation, you'll be facing some very serious consequences. Lisa's heart raced as she struggled to maintain her composure. Our attorney is looking into this, and I can assure you that we've done nothing wrong. We're not going to be bullied by your baseless accusations. Karen let out a derisive laugh. Your attorney, she scoffed. Do you really think a fancy lawyer is going to save you? I have the full backing of the HOA, and they're more than happy to side with me. You're fighting a losing battle, my dear. With that, Karen turned on her heel and sauntered away, leaving Lisa standing in the garden, her hands shaking with a mix of fear and fury. The encounter had shaken her to the core, and she knew that they needed to take action before Karen's threats became a reality. Hurrying back inside, Lisa found Dave hunched over his laptop, his brow furrowed in concentration. Honey, we need to talk, she said, her voice tight with urgency. Dave looked up, his expression immediately shifting to one of concern. What is it? What happened? Lisa quickly recounted her encounter with Karen, her words tumbling out in a rush. She's not backing down, Dave. In fact, she's doubled down on her threats, and she's claiming to have the full support of the HOA. Dave's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with determination. That's it, he said, pushing himself away from the desk. I'm going down to the HOA office and getting to the bottom of this. Lisa reached out, grasping his arm. Wait, honey, I really don't think that's a good idea. You're just going to play right into Karen's hands. We need to let our attorney handle this. Dave hesitated, his muscles visibly tense. You're right, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. But I can't just sit here and let her continue to terrorize us. We need to take a stand. Lisa squeezed his arm reassuringly. I know, but let's do it the right way, through the proper legal channels. Our attorney said he's looking into it, and I trust that he'll be able to put a stop to Karen's antics. Dave nodded, his expression resolute. Okay, we'll do it your way. But if I don't hear from the lawyer soon, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. The couple exchanged a tense glance, both acutely aware that the battle lines had been drawn, and the stakes were higher than ever. Days turned into weeks as Dave and Lisa anxiously awaited their attorney's next move. The constant barrage of threatening letters from Karen only served to heighten their stress and anxiety, leaving them constantly on edge. Finally, the long-awaited call came, and Dave hurried to answer the phone, his heart pounding. "Yes, hello. What's the update?" "I'm afraid the news isn't good," the attorney's voice replied, tinged with a note of regret. "After conducting a thorough investigation, it appears that Karen does, in fact, have the full backing of the HOA." Dave's face fell, his stomach sinking. "What? But how is that possible? We've done nothing wrong." "I know, and I'm truly sorry," the attorney sighed. "But the HOA board has sided with Karen, claiming that you and Lisa have repeatedly violated the neighborhood bylaws. They're prepared to take legal action against you if you don't comply with their demands." Dave ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "This can't be happening. We've always been good neighbors, and now we're being bullied by this. He struggled to find the right words, his frustration and anger boiling over. I know, the attorney said, his voice soothing. "But we're not giving up just yet. I'm going to keep fighting this, but you and Lisa need to be prepared for a long, drawn-out battle." Dave felt Lisa's hand on his arm, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "We're ready," he said, his voice firm. "Whatever it takes, we're not going to let Karen win." "Good," the attorney replied. "I'll be in touch with more details soon. In the meantime, try to stay strong and avoid any confrontation with Karen or the HOA. We need to play this smart." As Dave hung up the phone, he felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. He and Lisa were facing an uphill battle, but they were determined to fight back against Karen's blatant abuse of power. This was no longer just about the neighborhood bylaws. It was a matter of principle, and they were willing to do whatever it took to protect their home and their way of life. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal maneuvering as Dave and Lisa's attorney fought tooth and nail against the HOA's accusations. Depositions were taken, evidence was gathered, and a flurry of motions and counter-motions were filed in a desperate attempt to stall the inevitable. But through it all, Karen remained a constant presence, her smug smile and taunting remarks a constant reminder of the uphill battle they were facing. She seemed to take particular delight in flaunting her power, making a show of her close ties to the HOA board and her unwavering confidence in their ability to prevail. One day, as Dave was leaving for work, he found a stack of papers taped to his front door. A notice of a pending HOA hearing that would determine the fate of his and Lisa's home. His heart sank as he read through the details, his hands trembling with a mix of anger and fear. Hurrying back inside, he found Lisa in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. "Honey, we've got trouble," he said, his voice tight with urgency. Lisa's eyes widened as Dave explained the situation, and she felt a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. "Oh no," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "This is it, isn't it? They're really going to try and force us out." Dave nodded, his jaw clenched with determination. "Well, they're not going to win without a fight. I'm going to that hearing, and I'm going to give them a piece of my mind." Lisa reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Honey, please, we need to be careful. You can't just go in there guns blazing. We need to let our attorney handle this." Dave's eyes flashed with a hint of defiance. "I'm sorry, Lisa, but I can't just sit back and let them walk all over us. This is our home, and I'm not going to let Karen and her cronies take it away from us without a fight." Lisa sighed, knowing that there was no reasoning with her husband when he was in this kind of mood. "Okay, but please just promise me you'll be careful. I don't want you to do anything that could jeopardize our case." Dave pulled her into a tight embrace, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. "I promise, honey. I'll do whatever it takes to protect our home." As the day of the hearing approached, the tension in the household reached a fever pitch. Dave and Lisa knew that their very way of life was hanging in the balance, and they were determined to fight for it with every ounce of their being. The day of the HOA hearing dawned, and Dave and Lisa made their way to the community center, their hearts heavy with trepidation. As they entered the room, they were immediately greeted by the sight of Karen, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "Well, well, if it isn't the troublemakers," she drawled, her lips curling into a condescending smile. "I hope you've got your affairs in order, because after today, you're going to be looking for a new place to live." Dave's jaw tightened, and he had to resist the urge to lash out at the woman who had tormented them for so long. "We'll see about that," he replied, his voice low and measured. As the hearing commenced, the HOA board members listened intently as Karen presented her case, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. She painted a picture of a neighborhood in disarray, with Dave and Lisa's property serving as the epicenter of the chaos. But when it came time for Dave and Lisa to make their defense, their attorney stepped forward, his expression calm and assured. He methodically dismantled Karen's allegations, presenting a wealth of evidence that proved the couple had done nothing wrong. The tension in the room was palpable as the board members deliberated, their faces a mask of concentration. Finally, the HOA president stood, his expression grave. "After careful consideration, this board has decided that the claims made against David and Lisa are unfounded," he announced, his voice firm. "We find no violation of the neighborhood bylaws, and therefore we are dismissing all charges." A collective gasp rippled through the room, and Karen's face twisted with fury. "This is an outrage," she shrieked, her composure crumbling. "You can't do this. I demand a recount." The HOA president raised a hand, silencing her. "The decision is final, Mrs. Simmons. This hearing is adjourned." As the room erupted into a cacophony of voices, Dave and Lisa stood in stunned silence, their hands clasped together in a tight embrace. They had won, against all odds, and the weight of their victory threatened to overwhelm them. But as they turned to leave, they caught sight of Karen, her face a mask of pure rage. They knew that this was far from over, and that the battle for their home had only just begun. In the weeks that followed the HOA hearing, Dave and Lisa found themselves in the midst of a new and unexpected conflict, one that had nothing to do with their property or the neighborhood bylaws. Karen, incensed by her defeat, had launched a relentless campaign of harassment and intimidation against the couple. She bombarded them with nasty emails, made scathing remarks whenever they crossed paths, and even went so far as to spread vicious rumors about them throughout the community. Despite their attorney's advice to avoid direct confrontation, Dave and Lisa found it increasingly difficult to maintain their composure. The constant barrage of attacks was taking a toll on their mental and emotional well-being, and they knew that something had to be done. One day, as Lisa was tending to her garden, Karen strolled by, her eyes narrowed with malice. "Looks like you're still clinging to those pathetic flowers," she sneered. "It's a shame they'll have to be uprooted along with the rest of your life here." Lisa felt a surge of rage coursing through her veins, and before she could stop herself, she whirled around to face her neighbor. "That's enough, Karen," she snapped, her voice trembling with emotion. "We've done nothing to deserve this constant harassment, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore." Karen's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly recovered, a twisted smile spreading across her face. "Oh, really?" she purred. "And what exactly are you going to do about it?" Lisa took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to do. "I'm going to the police," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "I'm filing a report for harassment and intimidation, and I'm going to make sure you face the consequences of your actions." Karen's expression shifted from one of triumph to one of panic, and for the first time, Lisa saw a glimmer of fear in her neighbor's eyes. "You can't do that," she cried, her voice rising in pitch. I'll sue you for defamation." Lisa shook her head, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Go ahead and try. But I have a feeling the courts won't look kindly on your continued abuse of power and your blatant disregard for the law." With that, Lisa turned on her heel and marched back into her home, leaving a stunned and terrified Karen in her wake. She knew that this was just the beginning of a long and arduous battle, but she was determined to see it through to the end. As Dave embraced her, the two of them knew that they had finally found the strength to stand up to their neighbor's relentless onslaught. And with the law on their side, they were confident that they would emerge victorious, no matter what obstacles lay ahead.